Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Pre-IPO Stocks podcast. With me, I got Nick Fusco, CEO of 8View, a pre-IPO secondary market pricing company. Clint Sorenson, Chief Investment Officer of WellShield, an outsourced CIO and investment research company. And of course, got a very special guest today with us, Alex Esparza, Managing Director at Freedom Capital Markets, which I think is my new favorite company, to be quite honest. It's an investment bank and wealth management firm. Alex, thanks for joining us. All right, so we got three topics queued up today. One, SpaceX did a tender offer. We'll talk about that. Also, Wall Street Journal blessed them with a monopoly nomenclature. So that's huge. We want to talk to the group about that. Shein is moving into a marketplace business to compete with Amazon. And Threads, which is Meta's new Twitter competitor, just launched. So Alex, I'm going to kick it. I'll throw it over to you first, right? So look, when I was a kid, there was no opportunity to invest into space. It didn't exist, right? You kind of watched on television. They sent the shuttle up. NASA sent the shuttle up, and that was pretty much all you saw of it. Now there's companies popping up everywhere that you can invest into, right? So what do you think about this space economy, right? Mm-hmm. From an investor's perspective, do you like it? Do you think there's interesting companies there? Do you like the investment thesis? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's obviously from a tech perspective, it's super compelling. When we think space tech, I think a lot of kind of the general thinking is, towards space exploration and space travel, sort of where the mind goes. But there's so many elements of what's going on in space tech that is just simply mission critical, for our future in terms of, telecommunications. I know we talked earlier about, something as mundane as if you're in a rural area, right? You need better satellite coverage. As we continue to, globalize and explore, and we will require better, pipes for higher speed internet, better communications, better connectivity. Being able to get satellites up in the sky and being the owners of those satellites is going to be increasingly important. So, I think it's a great secular trend to be looking at. And we've seen a number of, companies that have made their public debut over the last couple of years, some via SPAC. And I think it, continues to be an emerging sector, but one that, investors and people interested in, emerging tech should certainly be looking at.
Yeah, those other companies is interesting that you brought up, kind of the ancillary pieces around it, because I've been hearing from some of my VC buddies that now that SpaceX can basically send stuff up so frequently, it actually opens up the market for other companies to start, startup companies to now, they can get something to space where they couldn't really do that before, right? So Clint, that kind of begs the question, so Wall Street Journal this week came out and said that SpaceX has a monopoly. Their words, not mine, although I do agree with them, right? So, what do you think about this? Do you think SpaceX has a monopoly kind of for rocket launches? And and then to Alex's point, do you think that opens up kind of other opportunities or industries, that can kind of fit into that space economy?
Absolutely. So not only the areas that Alex mentioned, but also if you think about if we really are going to have a green future, right? Nuclear's got to be in that debate, right? In terms of clean energy, and you start to think about waste, and you start to think about the ability to ship waste. There's the space is the limit, I guess you could say. But I'm very optimistic about this new frontier. I also think that it's super important to kind of think about not SpaceX as a monopoly, although that is what it is, but it's more of a platform, right? So if you give access to a new area, a new frontier, whether it be the internet or the app marketplace, right? Apple essentially has a monopoly on apps, right? Amazon had a monopoly. We'll talk about that here in a second on really this internet marketplace. And I think SpaceX has a platform now for space exploration. Every business that you could think about that could start up is going to rely heavily on SpaceX for that. And I think it's phenomenal for their business and their investors.
Yeah, it's the platform aspect of this is a really interesting way of thinking about it, right? And that I had put some thought to, but it really kind of speaks to the revenue potential, I think, that could come out of SpaceX, right?
Yeah. Let them start taxing everybody that goes up there, right? I mean, that just becomes a super scalable business model, and they do what they do really well, and that's build satellites and build things that get it to space and do that with perfection and efficiency. And no one's going to go out there and try to recreate that process. They're just going to tap into it.
Yeah, true. That's true. Well, so all right. So Nick, so they have SpaceX just did a tender offer, right? And I was wondering, could you tell folks, because I don't know if a lot of people are familiar, with the secondary trading for SpaceX. Like, it's kind of special, right? The way that they approach it. But could you just tell us a little bit about what you know around SpaceX and kind of how they work in the secondary and also the primary market? Whatever you got.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as far as companies go, SpaceX has really had very little trouble raising capital, and we look at that as more of your primary capital raises through VC. They had a bunch of really early stage influential and angel investors, things like that. And then round by round, usually companies will get up to Series E or F or G. I don't even know the letter that SpaceX is at this point. They're probably nearing the X, right? That's the general sense of how much cost it takes to operate a company like this, right?
Right.
But the secondary activity is really anything that occurs in between those funding rounds. And that's what we're really seeing a significant amount of in SpaceX. It's consistently in the top 5 companies of everything that ApeView tracks. Okay. And that really just means that there's liquidity in between those funding rounds, or opportunities for existing investors to exit, or new folks that would like to enter the market to come in. And with such a big name, it doesn't necessarily limit you to have to come at it with a $50 million check. Aaron, you yourself have a great vehicle for the entry point of SpaceX and many more companies, right? And these are the types of firms that I think people want to be understanding, because you can read about it in the news every single day. $150 billion company, that's in the S&P 500 if they were to IPO tomorrow. So
for sure.
There's just so much to it. And even some of the financials come out. So I think they had something like $8 billion in sales. And then if you look at that as a multiple, that's not bad,
Yeah. It's
relative to the valuation of the company. So that's really how that market works. And then I'm in Britain right now, so I'm just calling it like the tender offer. Or there are a few other names for it, but effectively when you're allowing liquidity for the existing employees that own common shares, that's great. It allows them to get some liquidity and then brings those shares to the market. It doesn't raise money for the company directly, but it really keeps the staff happy. So I think they're doing all the right things in that regard to managing the cap table, which is a really difficult thing to do for companies this large that aren't public.
Yeah, it's a fascinating business, and it's interesting too, because Nick, you and I are living in this pre-IPO space every day, right? I mean, most companies are still down. They kind of really haven't followed what's going on in the public markets, with the Nasdaq kind of coming back the first half of the year, but SpaceX is like an outlier, right?
Exactly.
It's up.
SpaceX is up, I think, between 6 and 10% in the last 12 months from ApeView data. They're up annualized 14% from that last funding round in December. And we see the rest of the market through the index product down about 20 over a 12-month, a rolling 12 month.
Yeah.
So they are, what does that make that? 26 to 30% above on a delta basis from everything else.
Yeah, it's an interesting play. Okay, let's shift gears over to Shein. Okay, so first of all, has anyone ever bought anything from Shein? I have not. Has
Admittedly, yes.
That's awesome. Okay,
yes,
so
I'll admit it.
What was your experience? Is it good? Did you like it? What did you think?
So I am very much a fashion-loving person, so cannot resist the temptation of millions and millions and millions of SKUs at a pretty reasonable price point. When I first came across the site, years ago, I think it's what is to be expected, right? When you're getting a product that is at that price point, it coming from such a distance to get to you.
Yeah.
But the just as like a casual peruser, it's really remarkable what they've been able to spool up in such a short period of time, just insofar as, the sheer variety available, the quickness of the turns. I think, they have new SKUs every week or so.
Right.
Obviously, it's been to the ire of the fashion industry. You see something walking down the runway, and it'll hit Shein almost immediately. But that's all to say, I understand the draw of the platform, and why I think it's resonated so strongly with Gen Z, which is probably going to be a lot of what we talk about when we start talking about their move towards more platformization.
Yeah, right. Well, it's a $66 billion company. Like, I think most people in the U.S. have never even heard of them. I mean, investors, I should say, because I think there's a lot of consumers that use the product, but I think investors, like, it doesn't even hit the radar. Okay, so Clint, let me ask you this question. So these guys want to start competing with Amazon, right? They're like, right now they're doing all their own kind of proprietary clothing, right? Making that and selling it. They want to start bringing on third parties and like competing with Amazon. That's tough. I think that's tough. Like, what do you think about that decision? Is that something that could work here in the U.S. market or maybe other markets?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. I think you're going to continue to. All those businesses are difficult because you already have people kind of embedded into the ecosystem of Amazon, right? So I think, or embedded into other ecosystems, and I think that makes it very difficult for them to substitute that because there's all the classic nudges that are already existing on the platform to make you consume. You're just going to consume there. But I do think there's always an opportunity to grab market share. I was a big fan of Shopify for this kind of arming the resistance mentality, where they said, "Hey, we're gonna arm independent sellers and independent business owners." Right? That kind of fed my decentralization craving. So I really like that format over Amazon kind of just dominating at that point. But then Amazon shifted and started powering these independent business owners. So I think it's very easy for Amazon to pivot and kind of, stiff arm the competition. But I think if someone's going to be able to do it, a $66 billion company with a ton of users, who's obviously demonstrated an ability to create and move product. Hey, if they can attract folks and kind of keep with their core vision of being this high fashion and a reasonable price opportunity for folks, I think they're going to do fine.
Okay.
I think there's room there.
Okay. So Nick, that's interesting. So that said, right, Shein's entering this space. TikTok's supposed to be entering this space too, right? So Shein's coming at it as they're like a clothing retailer, right? And well-positioned, as Clint just said, right? And now they're trying to cross-sell third-party stuff. TikTok's coming in as a social media platform, right? And trying to sell TikTok stuff. They got influencers and other things. So, like, which one would you kind of put a bet on, right? Would you think TikTok's going to have some more success here, or is this Shein kind of a better opportunity, already being kind of a e-commerce play?
Sure. For selling product, yeah, I'm going to move towards Shein. I think that's the better play, and I'm real keen to like play out what Clint had said, because Amazon, yeah, they really could compete with Spotify a little bit better and appeal to the local demographic of sellers. But if Amazon's going to go after the Chinese suppliers, hey, guess who's going to win that? Shein has them right there, and I think it's very much a protectionist play with the political dynamic between the U.S. and China right now as well. So
right.
I know that maybe, Aaron, you wanted to point me in the direction of TikTok and throwing some dance moves. See who's going to throw that out there. You've done this before. But,
I love it when you dance, Nick. I love it when you dance.
But a e-commerce play, I think Shein is already sitting there the same way. If you go back however many years when Amazon kicked off and beat the daylights out of Barnes & Noble. They're just coming in, and now fashion is their wedge, and let's open it up. Like they grew that user base so fast, and I know we're going to get to that with threads and everything else that we want to chat through. But the growth of that user base is explosive. Same thing with the ByteDance idea, but that's a replication of what Instagram is doing too. They're selling product, but
yes,
I don't know about that growth. I'm sure it's done well.
Yes. Okay, so Alex, let one more, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You had something?
Oh, I was just going to say, like, to Nick's point, I think it's you can't underestimate the power, the spending power and the buying power that Gen Z has, and the ways in which they've really been socialized to use Shein, right? Like you see on TikTok the way that the younger consumer has been habituated to buy, for better or for worse, more at a lower price point versus, curate small collections of things. They're aware of some of the environmental impacts and labor issues. They still want to buy it. And I think that user base is just very, very savvy about finding good deals of fashionable, trendy products en masse. Yes. And I think there's the easy use case to be made from, translating that kind of buying pattern away from clothes and into anything else, that they see something on TikTok for housewares or electronics, and it's kind of an easy add to cart that consumer is already doing.
Yes. All right. So let me ask you this question though, Alex. So you got give me some industry. I'm going to ask you kind of a more of a broader industry thing. So you got TikTok, who's trying to sell stuff to U.S. consumers. There's this company, Temu. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Okay. I'm seeing ads everywhere. I don't know if you guys see it. I see the ads everywhere for Temu, T-E-M-U, right? It's like a orange box, right? They're a Chinese company too, right? Alibaba is in the US. They're trying to sell stuff to people. And now we got Shein. So you got all these Chinese, retailers effectively coming into the US marketplace, trying to sell Amazon products. Do you think the American consumer would buy into that? I mean, I don't even think most people think TikTok's a Chinese company. It is. Right. But I don't know if most people using it outside of the political stuff that's happened recently even realize that was a Chinese company. I mean, do you think that these guys can be successful selling to U.S. consumer base? This kind of group of Chinese businesses?
I think when you look at the U.S. consumer, what you tend to see is there's consistently been a trade-off and a calculus that every consumer makes, right? Where Amazon has been hugely successful is providing the ultimate in convenience and kind of experiential shopping, in the sense that you can find anything and it shows up in a day or 2 days, right? That is very new, but we've gotten very used to it. And I think people tend to go to the Amazon marketplace versus other vendors because they know, what, it'll show up in 2 days. If I don't get it, I just put in a complaint, I get a refund, very easy. Right. Alternatively, something like Shein, that consumer is making the decision, hey, I'm willing to wait, a week, 2 weeks to get my giant box of, really cheap shoes and dresses and outfits and accessories. It's coming in a big haul. And I can do that, and I can sacrifice that convenience for, the product which they want and the price point. So sure. I think it's going to be that's where the decision making is going to come into play, right? Are you going to Alibaba to get something that's much cheaper than what you would pay if potentially you bought the same product, right? Because a lot of these are wholesalers that are, selling it to U.S. retail channels. Same product you'd buy through that retail channel, maybe more conveniently, but a much higher price point. Are you willing to sacrifice that convenience? Or do you want to buy, tin foil and paper cups and, groceries that have to show up the next day to your house without a lot of thinking?
So it's perhaps different markets or different, I don't know, use cases probably isn't the right word, but different markets, right? Depending on what the consumer is looking to do. That's I haven't thought about that before. That's an interesting take. Okay, let's talk Threads. All right, Meta's new kind of Twitter competitor, Threads, right? So anybody got a Thread account? Anyone tried it out? I have, but you guys haven't tried it? Come on.
Then you kick it off. Let's hear it.
I'm not really a Twitter user either, so that's kind of why I haven't made that transition.
Okay, fair enough. So I tried it. A couple observations. One, you have to sign in with your Instagram account, so it's directly integrated with Instagram. You can't open an account unless you have an Instagram account, effectively. Which to me kind of thinks they got all these opens and everything, but it's you kind of click a button and you got a Threads account, right? So it's you do have to download a new app, so I'll give them that, right? But it seems like it's a little bit of a easier onboarding than maybe you would have otherwise. My wife, I don't really use Instagram a lot. I don't have the Instagram app on my phone. My wife uses Instagram all the time. She got prompted. So they're prompting people to open up Threads accounts. But it looks like Twitter. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like the same. I mean, I don't want to say it's the same thing, but it's very similar, right? It's like right out of Mark Zuckerberg copy paste playbook, right? With a lot of the stuff that the fellow does. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, so Nick, like, do you think that these guys, Twitter's a private company now, right?
Right.
Pre-IPO stock, and there's like buzz that maybe Twitter goes public in a couple of years' time, and I'm hearing some of that now. Like, you know, do you think Threads is going to take market share from Twitter? Is it going to be like a real play? I mean, Musk seems to have like a different vision for Twitter anyway, but like what do you think about all that?
Well, I think that's probably the perfect time to launch Threads. So, you know, Truth Social, it's a thing, you know?
Yep. Right.
They took some market share, and they took a specific corner of that market. And if you look at Twitter, I mean, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, and the vibe is very different between the two, right? There's a lot of BS that goes on Twitter that people really wouldn't bring across to the LinkedIn community, even if it was a corporate account. You know, it's very, very interesting. And there's less levity on, let's say, Twitter as there would be on Instagram. So maybe you almost get like this different type of individual that wants to have some sort of Twitter exposure as the Instagram or Gen Z. Alex will have a good handle on them for like parlaying it from the Shein community and things like this. But you know what? It might be just a new channel for a great number of people that like to show off what they're up to on their vacations and their trips, and then they want to start chatting about what's going on in the world. I think it's pretty cool. The number of conversions to get to 10 million users, I think, was 7 hours here versus 40 days for ChatGPT. Very interesting, pretty incredible. There. But also, if you had that Instagram account and you tried to just get off of Threads, apparently people were in an uproar because you had to remove your Instagram, which everyone refused to do. So super weird dynamics here, but I think they will definitely take some market share. Maybe not in terms of user count because people will keep both, but in terms of everyday use, it's a threat.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Yeah. So it's got a place, right? So Clint, like I know you're like a data guy and data ownership guy, right? Like I read the privacy policy for Threads. It's nuts. They can take like everything. Yeah. So is this just like a data play for Meta? Like, and perhaps that like power one of their AIs? Like these large language models are like a big deal now. Now you're going to have like all these people commenting, interacting, posting content on different topics, right? Like, is this all just the data play to kind of feed a Meta AI?
I think every platform play is a data play. And if it wasn't, it fast became one first during the advertising revenue years. And now with AI, it's just the price of data is going to skyrocket, and in my opinion. And so I think I think everything's a data play. And I think that's the one thing Zuckerberg learned through his process is the accidental data keeping that happened early in his business and how much that really elevated the value of Facebook, now Meta. I think this is just another great play to, in an attempt to give people what they want over the internet, which is what Steve Jobs said was the holy grail to business. So, I think it's a data play. You know what? I'm not even really concerned with the whole Threads versus Twitter debate. I just want to see them fight in the UFC. I think that's going to be really cool. So I'm super excited about that happening.
But listen, I got to tell you, like Musk is like 6'3" or something, right? He's like a big guy, and like
but Zuck's been training. Zuck's been training jiu-jitsu for a while, but now I saw that Musk hired. He has like GSP helping him now. So George St. Pierre. Really? And he's learning some jiu-jitsu as well with Lex. I think it's Lex Friedman, who's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So it's gonna be interesting to see who can learn jiu-jitsu the fastest to get in there and win. But my money's on Musk just because I think he's just he's built like a 50s refrigerator.
He is a big guy, man. He is a big guy. All right, so Alex, wrap us up here, right? So, you got all of these social media platforms, right? I think a lot of them are trying to like redefine themselves. Musk is trying to basically make Twitter into a payments platform, right? I mean, what do you think? Like, are these businesses, are they always just going to be advertising businesses, right? Or are they going to be able to parlay, like TikTok's moving into e-commerce now, right? Musk wants to do payments and banking and other kind of services for Twitter. Like, is there opportunities for these guys to kind of move into other products or other services and kind of have advertising be a lesser, a lesser component of their revenue?
Well, if I knew that, I'd probably be very rich. But I think, I mean, Twitter's it's an interesting company, right? It's something that Zuckerberg wanted to buy initially. It's a very simple premise, right? It's kind of like ad hoc thoughts. That's what makes it sticky. That makes it what people want to participate in. I think the flip side of that, though, is it's something that I think is very hard to monetize outside of advertising, right? Like these other platforms you mentioned lend themselves very beautifully to building an e-commerce platform or distribution platform behind them because they're visual, they're audio. We're finding that everyone loves video content. Video content is like the easiest way to be selling things because it's almost like, TikTok is like QVC to a certain degree, right? You have influencers making food with products or trying things on. It is an infomercial just organically. So, I'm hesitant to, again, like I wish I knew. I think Twitter and Twitter-like formats are harder to monetize outside of advertising. One, I think two, I'm very, very curious to see where Threads goes because I think what we're witnessing is something we haven't seen in a really long time or at all, which is I don't want to say it's a new social media network because it's part of Meta, but it's a newish tool that doesn't have to contend with the problem of customer acquisition, right? It has a built-in customer base. It has network effects like day one. And it's also a situation where the kind of core user base of Twitter, which is a much smaller social media network than kind of these other tools we're talking about, have expressed a grievance. I know quite a few people in my social circle are journalists and authors and people that either make news or consume news or kind of utilize Twitter as a true utility. And they talk about it like my whole livelihood is bound up in my ability to, post things to my followers and my ability to kind of see what's going on. And, to varying degrees, like grumbling to, existential crisis, it's for them and for, I think, a lot of people who have made a living on Twitter and who, really use it to, for business purposes. Right. It's kind of become, if you're in New York or like how we gripe about, you get one cable company, right? And if the cable man doesn't show up, he comes, in an 8-hour window, you miss a day of work, he still doesn't show up, you have no internet, you have to live with it. Now there's actually an alternative to a product that people have started to get angry with and dissatisfied with. So that's a unique situation we have not seen played out because it's utility for all intents and purposes that people were stuck in because it was a monopoly. That there's now an alternative to with almost seamless migration. And they have a built-in network effect. So who knows what's going to happen, but it's a dynamic we have not seen before.
Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, look, I think it's going to be around. There's got 100 million people on there. There's going to be some few million people always on that all the time, right? So I don't think Threads is going away, but it will be interesting to see how it shakes. Okay, anything else this week, guys? Anything else that's on your mind that you want to hit on? Nothing? I got a Whoop. I've got a Whoop
too. Love my Whoop.
I got a Whoop, and I got to tell you, I love it. It's like, I'm trying to get healthy. I'm trying to get healthier. I'm a man of a certain age now. I got to get healthier, so I got the Whoop, right? And I'll let you know how it goes. I'm trying to get more sleep. So, all right, this is great. Okay, well, listen, thanks everyone for joining. Alex, thank you very much for being our guest.
Thank you for having me. This is really fun.
All right, cool. All right, everyone have a good week, okay? Talk to you guys.
See ya.
Great.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.